if you're a young engineer and you're thinking about, what do I want to do? The I always remember you've got a toolbox. You've paid a lot of money for those tools, a ton of money in some cases. Just remember when you start working, the first 5 years I think are the most critical because those are the first 5 years you need to turn into a sponge. You want to absorb everything you can, whether it's in your design, if you're going into design or you're going into quality, you're going into regulatory or wherever, absorb as much as possible.
Welcome to What Do You Do? The podcast that explores the dynamic world of STEM careers. We dive into the personal stories and career paths of professionals, offering valuable insights for those aspiring to follow in their lead. Welcome to What Do You Do? So happy to have you, Jason.
Excited to be here, Amanda.
Yeah, tell us a brief introduction about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Jason Glithero. I've been an engineer for quite some time now. I'm currently working at a neurovascular company in the Bay Area. Prior to that, I've had experiences. I actually started in cardiac, where I was doing RF ablation, cryoablation, and a left atrial appendage device. Went from there over to urology, and then did some consulting for a little while, and then ended up in the Bay Area. So kind of all over the US and then all over the body. So.
Yeah, and I see that you went to school for mechanical engineering. How did you end up in medical?
Yeah, interesting story. I actually went to school. I started off in civil engineering. Um, Quickly figured out I did not like civil engineering. Had a very good friend of the family sit down with me one day. She was a electrical engineer at Motorola in Phoenix, and she said, "Look, I've known you for years. I've watched you grow up. You're not going to be a good civil engineer. You're not going to be you would do really great in mechanical engineering." So I started looking into it, and one thing that she said was, this is more of a jack of all trades type of thing. So started looking into it and just really kind of fell in love with it. A lot of what I did growing up was working on cars and doing that kind of stuff, taking things apart and just designing things, thinking of things. So it kind of was just a natural fit. So I did my undergrad in mechanical, and at the time I was also in the National Guard. So I was working on refueler trucks that basically got the gas, the jet fuel from the tanks or from a truck into KC-135. So did that for a while. Was like, yeah, this is really cool. I'm working on vehicles. Then I ended up going and working for Honeywell doing avionics. So
Oh,
kind of been all over several different industries before I finally landed the last 20 years in med device.
wow. So, what's kept you in medical device?
Let's see. The fact that it's just it changes somebody's life and you can see it. Um, I when I did so I worked for Honeywell right out of school. Actually, I worked for Nissan Research and Development writing software for them. And this was right before the 2000 Y2K was a big thing. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. So I kind of made a decision and like not going to go that route, going to go into design and development.
Yeah.
Ended up getting a job with Honeywell designing avionics. Um, worked for worked on their next generation team and actually designed and developed avionics that if you fly today on a lot of Delta flights and you fly in an Embraer 175, 195, chances are two of my patents are on that airplane and the hardware that I created is on there. So
That's
get off.
so
No, I'm just
cool.
kidding. It's still there.
Now, next time I fly Delta, I'll be thinking of you.
Yeah, it's actually really easy to for me because I know what I'm looking for. If you look in the cockpit and between the pilot and co-pilot, if there's two like bumps between them,
Okay.
one on either side of the center console there, that is a mouse pad and some knobs. So if that's on there, then that means the system they have is the Primus Epic system, which means the hardware underneath is my hardware. So I get a giggle every time I walk on and I look and I'm like, look at that. So
You
yeah,
remind me of me when I go to grocery stores and I see cortisone boxes. I go, "Oh, I know the packaging engineer that designed that." So now I'm going to be going
exactly.
on Delta flights. You know that? I'm going to be talking to
Exactly.
my husband like, "We have to book a Delta flight. I need to see the system." Like,
Yep.
that's not why you book a Delta flight. It's like, but
Yeah,
yes, it is.
it is today. So yeah, so I did that for a while. I was on their next generation team, and then I left there and went to Lucent Technologies, doing computational fluid dynamics, which is something I learned at Honeywell. I got really kind of just wanting to get into the analysis capability. So I
Yeah.
did that. Started doing computational fluid dynamics, doing structural analysis and things like that for avionics. Got a job with Lucent Technologies, found out that they weren't going to do it there anymore in Ohio. So they shipped the job up to New Jersey. I'm like, no, that's too cold. I'm not going to New Jersey. And then I actually ended up at a consulting firm for a while. So I did a ton of a high level, just being an analyst for a
Wow.
while, just taking 3D CAD data, creating FEA, running an ANSYS. Was using a ton of ANSYS back in early or late 90s and then early 2000. Went from there, decided well, actually 9/11 happened. And after 9/11, I was just getting pinged left, right, and center for jobs in avionics. And this time it was the military avionics. So I ended up working for a company that I believe GE acquired called Smiths Aerospace. And so I went there, and my sole job was to unwrap the electronics that were around a generator and put it in a box and then cool it. And then being able to cool that with engine oil versus jet fuel, which engine oil is a little hotter, so there were some challenges with that, plus the
Yeah.
viscosity. So, the mechanical engineering background, the fluids class where people are like, will I ever use fluids? It's like, yeah, you will. So I did that for a while and I got bored, honestly. And so I ended up going back for my master's degree because I noticed everybody that I was interviewing um, had a master's degree and I couldn't, and so I started questioning why. Why is everybody got a master's degree around here? And this was in Dayton, Ohio. And what I found out is at like Wright State University, if
Yeah.
you graduated with a bachelor's, and this was and if there wasn't any jobs, you could sign on to get your master's degree and they would help pay for it. And so here I am in my 30s going, I have to compete against these people. So I went back and got my master's degree in computational fluid dynamics because I was actually doing quite a lot of work in there. Um,
Yeah.
and then I just out of the blue one day got a phone call from this guy. I had this conversation. It was the weirdest interview I ever had in my life, where he was just telling me how great it's going to work for it to be to work for his company. He was on the way. He was driving up to Buffalo, New York, and he's just telling me I'm gonna do great at this company and he'd be great to have me on board and can't wait to get me started. And I'm like, hung up the phone. I'm like, that is the weirdest call I've ever had. And I started actually October 4th, so last Friday, would be 20 years on the day I started with a company called AtriCure. So
Wow.
that's how I got into
So it was just
medical.
like
And
a
the
random
reason
call in the middle.
Well, he called me saying he was going to call me, but it was just a
Okay.
random interview that I mean, I didn't call anybody to set up an interview. So, and I had been building some of the avionics I was doing to kind of your question of how did I get in or kind of get into here and why do I like it is I was building electronic systems to help unmanned aircraft um, with a lot of sensors and other things in it. And I just didn't feel comfortable with that. And so when med device came across, here I was now able to work on the body, and I was actually working on the heart with AtriCure. My brother, who's a teacher, works on the mind. My dad, who's a minister, works on the soul. So my parents had a whole thing about it. I thought that was cute, but I was like, oh, okay, all right, great. But it just kind of put me in a little better place. So,
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's an awesome story. So then, yeah. So then, what happens after Attricure? Kind of keep us, you got me
okay,
on the hook
keep
now. You have
going.
me interested. I'm
So,
so fascinated.
so AtriCure was a very interesting company, and coming from military avionics and regional jet avionics, telecommunications, consulting, when I was at the consulting firm, I actually did two medical devices. One of them, if you
Okay.
look it up, I think there's actually images because nothing dies on the internet. It's Vertigon goggles. I actually worked on the optics of that years ago. Now you could probably do it with a cell phone. It's the cell phone advancements are so far so ahead now. And then I also did what was it? It was a device for I did the cooling for this large vitros, I think it was, to get all the heat out of it while it was doing all this chemistry and stuff. And then also developed and designed, did the structural analysis for some components on it. So it was just I had done all this, but really didn't really get it. And it wasn't until I got to AtriCure that I was like, wow, this is super cool. And then at AtriCure, I did an implant. So one of their first implants, actually the first implant, was the AtriClip, which was the first to market, which basically eliminates the left atrial appendage from the left atrium, which they believe that's a center for thrombus to eject into the atrium to then go through the heart and then up to the brain, and you get a stroke. So getting rid of that is
Oh my gosh.
helpful to eliminate the probability of getting a stroke from thrombus ejected from the left atrial appendage. So it was just super cool to do that and super scary because I never went to school for any of this.
Yeah.
Biomedical engineering when I was in school was more about, hey, be a mechanical engineer or an electrical and take a biology class. That's biomed. Where I think early 2000s they kind of changed. I was like, no, we're going to have a nice structure for this. So it was very different from me, but the company AtriCure and the
Yeah.
vice president I worked with, Sam Privatera, just was an awesome person, helped mentored me. I worked for him for gosh, 13, 14 years. So I actually followed him to the next
Yeah.
job. So he did a lot of mentoring, and I'm very appreciative of having a mentor like
Yeah.
that in my especially my early career. But there were some defining moments during the development of that where, I had to make a choice. Did I really want to do this the rest of my life, or do I quit? Because we were doing, this is med device. We experiment on
Yeah.
animals, and I had to come to terms with I'm okay with that. And some people aren't. And like my wife, no way. No
No
way.
way.
But she appreciates it, and she also, she's very supportive of me, luckily.
Yeah.
And we've come to terms with it. I don't talk about it at the house. We don't discuss any of
Yeah.
that, and she's okay with that. So you got to know your boundaries, of course. Uh, so I had some defining moments at AtriCure that really helped me kind of grow. And then I also met Sam's wife, who I think we were at his house one day, and they were talking about how I like to get into design controls. For some reason, I'm one of those weird engineers that really likes design controls and is okay with it. And I was doing some teaching at AtriCure, and
Okay.
just trying to help people learn the design controls and stuff like that. And she asked me if I ever wanted to teach, and I'm like, yeah, that would be kind of cool, just me opening my
Yeah.
big mouth. And she said, well, what could you do to, yeah, because I don't have a PhD, and this was teaching at University of Cincinnati. And I'm like, well, I don't have a PhD, but in me opening my big mouth, I could get a PE. And she's like, what's a PE? I was like, oh, it's professional engineering. It's an 8 hour test. Engineers can take it. They take an FE. It used to be the EIT. Now it's the FE. And she said, great. Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah. So I basically had to find 5 people that I knew with PEs from the aerospace industry that I knew, called them up, was like, hey, can you give me a reference? Studied for 3 months and took the PE exam and passed. So then I became
Wow.
an adjunct professor. So, so
Wow. So you've
yeah,
always, well, look, full circle. You're following your family. Your
exactly.
brother's also a teacher. Full
Exactly.
circle. Started at the heart, continuing to work in medical device
E-
in the health industry, but
Yep,
went back to teaching.
absolutely. So yeah,
That's
so I did
awesome.
Yeah, I did that for a while. Because AtriCure, we had a really great, some of the questions that you were asking or we're going to ask about, following footsteps and things like this.
Yeah.
Certain universities, like University of Cincinnati, Georgia Tech, are the two that come to mind because I've worked with both of them, have a unique program where in the biomedical, I wish they expanded it to the medical and the others too, or the, I'm sorry, the mechanical engineering. But the biomeds have a unique program where they basically will, uh, like 2 semesters, 2 full semesters, they have to go and work at a company. And it's not just the summer, just not just the three
Yeah.
months. It's like you go there for like 4.5 months, and you do like 2 or 3 of those, depending if you're in your sophomore, junior, or senior year. And it takes a little more time to graduate, but in my experience, it makes a better, more rounder type of individual.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. My
it
husband did
definitely
that
helped.
too.
Oh, did
He went to
okay. So
Drexel, so he did the
okay.
co-op program. So he's
Yep.
also a mechanical engineer, and he actually
Yep.
did his co-op at Globus Medical. So he was working
Okay.
with cadavers, and
Okay.
I don't even know what he was inserting, like different screws into the cadavers and whatnot. So
Right.
when you mentioned the co-op program, he has a wealth of experience from that. He's always referencing it whenever I have questions about something. He's like, "Well, back in the day when I
Uh,
did this."
Yeah. So to me, if somebody was going to follow in the footsteps and going into medical device, you know, personally, I'm a little more towards the mechanical engineer. I have counseled a lot of being working at HCure. I get the privilege of working with a ton of co-ops from the University of Cincinnati, biomedical. In fact, some of those people today are like CEOs of small companies, and so they've
No
done
way.
tremendous in their endeavors. And one thing is I've mentored a ton of young adults, and like whether they go, they come into R&D, and it's like, well, maybe R&D is not cut out. You're not cut out for that because maybe you are too analytical or you want everything to be straight and narrow. So maybe go look at quality, go look at regulatory, go look at something else. So I've been very fortunate to help young people figure out what they want to do. Um, and a lot of times, especially if they want to stay on the design side, I will typically, suggest to them, hey, take a hardcore mechanical class. You get like the basics of statics, dynamics, and something like that, but take something above and beyond, even if it's like a structural analysis course, or if that's what they want to do, because not everything is about tissue. And some of the biomedical classes are tissue based. Well, not everything we do is, I hire biomedicals, but they're doing catheter design, or they're doing urology catheters, or they're doing hardware. So it takes all kinds of engineers, not just biomeds, but we tend to, especially at a couple of large companies that I've worked at, tend to attract biomeds. But the reality is, these companies need electrical, software, mechanical,
Yeah.
chemical, those types of personalities and engineering industries as well. If a young person came to me today, actually, I had a young person uh, as a co-op this summer, so just a very short amount of time. And she was just really, I mean, she got things really
Yeah.
quickly. And so one of the things I was talking to her about was, going back. She's actually going back for her master's degree after some conversations that we've had. And one of the things that I talked to her about is, I don't think your personality would be good at a large company, because her personality was just go, 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 let's find. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're a sponge. As all people coming out of school should be, is sponges. They've got toolbox. They filled this toolbox. They paid a lot of money for this toolbox. Now the question is, where can they go and utilize all the drawers in that toolbox? And I don't think a large company for a lot of these individuals is the right place. I think these startups that you could get on 2 or 3 product launches in like 5, 6 years, versus, you go to a large company, one product launch like every 5 years maybe. Where
Wow.
prior to, my AtriCure time, I think it was 9 product launches in 8 years, something like that. It might have
Wow.
been a little less, but a lot.
Yeah, so you're involved with a lot. Yeah, the smaller companies, you're more hands on and you're wearing all these different hats, right? You can get a
Oh,
little quality experience. You're working directly with all the different engineers on that team, too.
absolutely. And in fact, I had a conversation today with a an OEM, and we were going through their design validation or design verification kind of plan. And having the experience that I've had working at a small company and getting all the knowledge of what not to do, as well as what to do, um, it was I was able to talk at it from the quality standpoint, talk about it from, because everything I was always taught, Sam did a really good job of teaching, everything starts with risk. How much risk do you have? You minimize the risk over time, and then by the time you're done, the risk should be gone. Or you have to label for it, or you have to educate for it. But that's you know, you got to start there. So I had the conversation today, and I was able to talk about, you know, those different areas without having to get those other people in. And then I pulled up some charts. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is where we are. What do you guys think about that? So it was very good to have that discussion, and I didn't have to drag 20 other people in there.
Yeah, yeah, because you have all the tools in your own toolbox and you have the experience to back it up. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, that's really awesome, and that's a great story. So I'm really interested in learning more about this mentor.
Yeah.
Birds of a feather fly together, and I can see why you guys flock together.
He was a very good mentor. He pushed me to where I was uncomfortable, but made sure I was successful. Um, and I didn't realize that till later on in life. At first I was like, oh, this guy, he's just being him, and it wasn't until later on in life it's like, wow, okay, that makes sense. Um, he was just, I always felt he was there for me, making sure that I was going to be successful. And that, to me, that's very important. I currently
Yeah,
mentor 9 people on my team, and there's a couple other people that are outside of my team. And, my goal is to make sure people have what they need, make sure that they, family wise, that they feel that what they're doing makes sense. And then they're just supported in anything that I can support them in. So,
yeah,
yeah, Sam was a very good mentor to me over the years, helped me out. I actually followed him from AtriCure down to CR Bard, which for if you don't know, CR Bard was acquired by BD in
yeah,
2017. Um, Unfortunately, I was one of the 6 out of 9 directors that were let go in 2018 um, due to that acquisition of Bard Medical.
wow.
So it is what it is. You bounce back.
So common,
Luckily,
right?
oh yeah, it's almost the norm. It's like when there's an acquisition, something's going to happen. Um, but it's really funny too. So how I got down to CR Bar or with Sam was my first phone call I actually left AtriCure. There's a new COO coming in.
Yeah,
I was basically, he and I did not align. I was actually helping to run the show quite a bit. We didn't align that well. He reorganized. That's fine. My first phone call wasn't to my wife, it was to Sam. And he's like, I'll work
Oh.
on something. You're going to come down here. So my second phone call was to my wife saying, hey, by the way, I'm coming home early. And she's like, what? And I said, don't worry, we're getting the house ready and we're moving down to Georgia. So had some conversations with Sam and ended up moving down there and working for him as
Wow.
a director of R&D um, at CR Bard. So I helped with the sustaining team, and then I ended up with stability, packaging, labeling, and let's see what else. And I had an MPI team. So kind of quite a lot. Ended up with like 30 plus people reporting up to five managers at one point. So a healthy team, half the
Yeah.
organization. So a lot of responsibility he gave me, and he was very supportive.
What has really helped you find new opportunities in the industry? Has it mostly been through people you know, or kind of
Yeah,
provide some insight into that?
yeah, it is basically don't burn your bridges. So, make sure.
Simple rule.
So I told you we were talking about how I got this phone call and it was about
Yeah.
AtriCure and just this guy. So when Sam left AtriCure, I asked him about that. So he left in 2011, and I asked him like, hey, this has always been burning in my head, but I just never really thought about asking. But why did you hire me? And he's like, well, contacts. He this was AtriCure was in Westchester, Ohio, which is down in Cincinnati. Then you have Tip
Yeah.
City, which was where I was living. That's directly north. Then you have Columbus, which is over to the east. And I had worked for a design firm, and several of the guys, the design firm went under. Not my fault. So I want to throw that out there. The design firm went under, and those people left, and they went to different places like their Priority Designs and Fitch, and a couple of big name
Yeah.
design firms. Design Central, I think, is another one out there. And so everybody kind of like split up and left. And Sam had contacts in those. And so he was looking for a mechanical engineer. And he said, my name just kept coming up. And I'm like, who? I want to know who this is. He's like, I'm not telling you. He goes, that's my secret. And I'm like,
Oh
I
my
would love to know
gosh.
who, because I want to go buy him a beer or something. Because they've put
Yeah.
me on an awesome trajectory. But no, I don't know who. Just Sam said that, yeah, he knew he was going to hire me before talking to me. So I
Just
call it the
from your
Quasimodo effect.
references. Just from your
So
references.
yeah,
Wow, that's amazing.
so
That's
don't burn
so
bridges.
cool. Yeah, they say that, right? Don't burn bridges No, don't burn a bridge faster than you can swim.
Well,
So
that's probably good too.
gotta be a fast swimmer
So
if you're gonna go around.
yeah, so
Yeah,
that's how, I got that job. And then when I called Sam, he's like, you want to come
what's
down
the
here? I'm
next
like,
one?
yeah. And he made it happen. So and then so Sam left in 2017, 2018, um, one of the guys that used to work for Bard left. He quit and he started working for a company called GCMI in Atlanta. And all of a sudden, when I got laid off, I just went home, you know, talked to my wife and made a couple phone calls, and it was amazing the number of recruiters that found out I was not at CR Bard. They started calling me. So I was having
Wow.
recruiters like, "Hey, I've worked with you for the last 3 years. Let's talk." And
Yeah,
they helped me with my
yeah.
resume. They helped me with, this and that. They're like, "Hey, can I help you interview?" I'm like, "Sure." So I ended up working as a consultant. I restarted my consulting business up and I started working for GCMI as a consultant, where I was actually helping the director there, who used to be one of the individual contributors at Bard. He had left to go there. So again, I just made
Small
people made
world.
phone calls and they're like, "Hey, Jason's out of work. Can you help him out?" And so
Yeah.
I started having plenty of work doing that, but it was also scary because, you know, I didn't know where my next dollar was coming from. So I ended up Sam's wife called me because she's also in med devices. She teaches. She's the one that teaches at University of Cincinnati. And said, "Hey, do you want to come up here and be a visiting professor?" I'm like, "Really?" So I ended up going up to Cincinnati and was a visiting professor and doing some consulting for an on-body drug delivery company up there. So here I am now, just kind of like living all over the place in Airbnbs, and just people are, "Hey, can I help you?" Can So I've been very, very fortunate with the people that I've worked with to help me find positions. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the stories. Oh my gosh, I'm fascinated. It's amazing. And I think,
It's quite a
if I
roller
remember
coaster ride.
correctly from our previous conversation, you have your own Airbnb, right?
I do out in the backyard. Yeah.
Okay, I have a good memory. Let me know if
You
I should
do.
cut
You
that
do.
out or not.
No, no, we do have an Airbnb. It just brings in some extra money, and it was part of the small house that I have in Oakland, California. So I have a tiny house with a tiny Airbnb, but people love it. So I let them
Yeah.
stay there. I don't know.
Well, this has been awesome. I feel like I've taken so much away from you. It's really cool stories that you shared. So many cool artifacts. I'm like, oh my gosh, so much to think about now. What's your parting words to
Um,
leave everyone with?
yeah, it's if you're a young engineer and you're thinking about, what do I want to do? The I always remember you've got a toolbox. You've paid a lot of money for those tools, a ton of money in some cases. Just remember when you start working, the first 5 years, I think, are the most critical because those are the first 5 years. You need to turn into a sponge. You want to absorb everything you can, whether it's in your design, if you're going into design, or you're going into quality, you're going into regulatory, or wherever. Absorb as much as possible. Try to understand. Ask why. There's start with the why, the five whys. Ask why, why. And try to understand the why, because that's going to build the basis for the next 15, 20 years of your career. And especially if you're one of those individuals that are like, I want to be a consultant. Yeah, but you need all that experience first. So get there, learn, absorb, take in, understand, and fill that toolbox. Make that toolbox the biggest, best toolbox you can. I tell that to all my new engineers that I hire, and I tell that to all the young engineers that are still in school, not yet graduated. So hopefully they're listening. Hopefully it makes sense. Maybe in 5 years they'll start telling me that I was right. I don't know, or maybe they'll tell me I was wrong. I don't know. I'm willing to be wrong.
Thank you for joining us on What Do You Do? We're excited to have had you with us today. Be sure to tune in next week for more inspiration, empowerment, and fresh insights into fascinating careers. Whether you're discovering a profession you've never heard of or finding new perspectives on familiar roles, there's always something for everyone. If you're interested in sharing your own career journey, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a private message and let's connect. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious. I'm Amanda Averill, and this has been What Do You Do?, where we delve into the diverse world of STEM careers. Thanks for listening.